All right, let's dive into a rule that seems super simple on the surface, but has a massive impact. We're talking about giving users a pause button for all the distracting stuff on the internet. It's a small tweak that honestly makes the web a whole lot better and more accessible for everyone. You know the feeling, right? You're just trying to read an article and there's this blinking ad in the corner of your eye, or a news ticker just scrolling and scrolling, and you can't turn it off. It's so frustrating. But what feels like a simple annoyance to most of us is actually a huge roadblock for a lot of people. And yeah, we're talking about way more than just a minor irritation here. For a whole bunch of users, this constant movement isn't just distracting, it can make a web page completely, totally unusable. Seriously, imagine trying to read a book while someone is waving a flashlight in your face. That's basically what it can feel like. It just shatters your concentration and can stop someone from getting to the information they really need. It's a genuine barrier. So, who's really getting hit the hardest by this? Well, for someone with an attention deficit disorder, focusing becomes almost impossible. For people with certain cognitive disabilities, or, anyone who just needs a little more time to read, the text basically becomes a moving target. And for screen reader users, oh man, auto-updating info can just keep interrupting the audio, turning the whole experience into a jumbled mess. So, what do we do about it? Thankfully, there's a really clear guideline for this. It's part of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short. We're just going to call it the pause button rule, because that's exactly what it is. So, the fancy official name is Success Criterion 2.2.2, Pause, Stop, Hide. And hey, the name pretty much says it all, right? The idea is simple. If some piece of content is moving, blinking, or updating all on its own, the user has to have a way to control it, to pause it, stop it, or just hide it. Okay, so how do you know when this rule actually kicks in? It all comes down to this really easy 3-point checklist. First, does the movement start all by itself, without you clicking anything? Second, does it keep going for more than 5 seconds? And third, is it on the page at the same time as other stuff you're trying to read? And that number, 5 seconds, that's not random. It's actually a pretty smart compromise. See, it's long enough for an animation to get your attention, but it's also short enough that if you really need to focus, you can just wait for it to finish without losing your mind. It's a nice little middle ground. And here is the bottom line. If you answered yes to all 3 of those questions, the rule is crystal clear. You must provide a way for the user to take control. There's no wiggle room here. If those conditions are met, you've got to have a control. All right, so that's the theory, but what does this look like out in the wild, on actual websites? Let's walk through a few common examples to make this really concrete. You can see the logic here pretty clearly. That blinking ad that stops itself after 4 seconds, that's totally fine. It's under the 5-second limit. A scrolling stock ticker that has a big obvious pause button, also great, because you're giving the user control. But an auto-updating newsfeed or a 10-second animation with no off switch, nope, that's a fail. That's taking control away from the user. And here's a super important point. The control itself has to be usable. A pause button that only works when your mouse is hovering right on it, and then the animation starts right back up the second you move away, that doesn't count. That's just trapping the user. The control has to be a real, functional fix. Okay, we need to clear something up that's really, really important. We've been using the word blinking a lot, but we have to be careful to distinguish it from flashing. They sound similar, I know, but in the world of accessibility, they mean very different things, and one is way more serious than the other. So here's the deal. Blinking is a distraction problem. It's annoying, for sure, but we can manage it with a pause button. That's what this rule, 222, is all about. Flashing, on the other hand, is a seizure risk. We're talking about content that flashes more than 3 times a second. That can be physically dangerous, and it is never, ever allowed, not even for a split second. That's covered by a totally different, much stricter guideline for a very good reason. So right about now, you might be thinking, but wait, what if the movement is the whole point of the thing? And that's a great question. The rule totally accounts for that. There are some common sense exceptions for when the movement is considered essential. The biggest exception actually comes back to that third question on our checklist. Is it presented next to other content? So think about a loading animation that takes up the whole screen. There's nothing else to be distracted from, right? The animation is the content. Same goes for a full-page video ad that plays before you can even get to the website. In those cases, since there's no other information to focus on, this specific rule doesn't require a pause button. So when you pull all this together, what's the big picture? It's really about designing with a bit of empathy. It's about respecting the user's attention and their needs.
And the payoff is huge. Following this one rule gives people control back, which is just fundamental to a good experience. It literally opens up the web for people who'd otherwise be shut out by a wall of distraction. And let's be real, it helps everybody focus better. It's just good, thoughtful, user-first design, plain and simple.
So I'll just leave you with this question. Whether you're a designer, a developer, or just someone who uses the web, what's one piece of moving content you can think of that would be instantly better with a simple pause button? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about following rules. It's about building a web that works for people.